Hello everybody, I am here with Marcus today. He's got a very interesting branded deck. He's using the Despia, Predaplant, and also the branded Regain card that came out in Dabble, which is Darkwing Blast for those who don't know. And that is a very, very interesting card with a side deck choice that he's about to show us.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
I've been playing branded for a little bit, and this is kind of just one of the ways that I like to play it during the current meta. So 3 Alubers. You really just need to play 3 because you need to see a way to branded fusion. It makes so many plays for you. 3 Despian Tragedies, because I play Allure in this deck, and drawing into this with Allure is just freaking insane. And then 1 Dramaturge and 1 Adlib. That'll be all the Despia names. Dramaturge really comes up a lot on the crackback if you can get, like if your opponent mills it for you, and you have branded in red, assuming it resolves, Dramaturge is just insane. Being able to make like Guardian Chimera with Adlib and Dramaturge is insane because it's like you get to turn your 3 monsters into 3 monsters, and the negate effect comes up a lot too. So yeah, if I wasn't playing it with like mostly branded and Despia, I probably wouldn't even play Dramaturge, but I feel like it's necessary.
I would also like to say with the whole branded in red and Chimera play, the amount of variety you can have with Adlib, Tragedy, and Dramaturge just by banishing it off of branded in red, or using one of these off the fusion material, you've got a lot of plays they can use just from using that one spell card.
Absolutely. These cards come up like quite a bit. They're almost never like a dead card in your hand, just because you have so many ways to fuse them off. Because with the Predaplant engine, we have a lot of access to different variations and different flavors of polymerization. So 2 Fallen of Albaz, you could argue for 3, because if somebody like if they don't have Ash and your branded fusion goes off and they imperm like your Albion or something, then, you know, if you have an Albaz in your hand, you can go and make Mirror Jade anyways. Or if your branded fusion gets Ash, then you would already have like Albaz plus Poly, then that's pretty cool. But for this, I just like 2 right now. And then I play the 1 Cartesia because it's a really good light target. It's follow-up in your end phase, so if you use it to make Albion, then, you know, it comes back to you in the end phase. And it's also just a really great target for turn, or a really great card for turn 3, because if, you know, it comes back to your hand in your end phase and then you use it in some way, like you discard it for like Super Poly or something during your opponent's turn, and, you know, you get to add it back again, and then, you know, you have access to Albaz in your graveyard or something, so you can just special it for free, and it's another copy of Polymerization, which is really strong for the deck, because one of the problems with it is like, oh, you ashed branded fusion? Well, I have no plays because I didn't open like a way to actually fuse. And then Albion, Mercourier, just 1 Albion, just because Upstart Goblin is cool, and it also dumps branded opening for you, which is really cool. And then Tri-Brigade Mercourier is pretty much the only hand trap we play in the deck, just because it is, you know, in a way searchable. I'm not playing branded Lost in this exact list, but I like when Mercourier comes up, because nobody really ever expects it. I'm probably going to end up putting Lost back in until I get Bestials, though, so it's just something to think about, because all 3 of these are good Lost targets. So that's all of the like Albaz cards.
How often does that Mercourier negate come up?
The Mercourier negate comes up like quite a bit. Like if you just like draw into it off of Allure, and then like, for example, your opponent, like I said, like they don't have Ash, but they have like Imperm or Droplet or some way to negate like your monsters, or like Veiler, right? You know, you make your Albion, they try to Veiler it, you can negate it with Mercourier. And drawing into it off of branded Regained is also really good, because you most likely, you know, have a Mirror Jade sitting there, so just slapping like an actual negate onto the board is really good, because the deck doesn't really put up like negates. Even like Dragastopalia is like a negate, so Yeah, Mercurier comes up a little bit, but it comes up a lot more with Lost. And honestly, you could just straight up cut it from what I'm playing right now because I'm playing 45. So it doesn't make a difference. But the deck is definitely better, more comfortable at higher than like 42 in my opinion. Spells, 3 branded fusion. I want this card to get a higher rarity reprint.
I think we should honestly get like a secret and maybe even like a Starlight printing of that. It's a legendary card in my opinion.
Yeah, it might, and it would probably be the first Starlight I ever pick up if it came out in Starlight.
Plus the art is just absolutely gorgeous.
But absolutely just like fist bump to Konami for printing that in a structure deck. The Albaz structure deck was just so good for the game in my opinion. Even though Despia itself is like a little bit cancerous to play against sometimes, it's like the deck is probably one of the better structure decks we've gotten, like up there with like the Dark Worlds and stuff.
And also the fact that this deck doesn't just, make negates, and like I know that's kind of a bad take in some points, but the interactions this deck has are very unique, and they're very diverse, honestly. And you can pick and choose your interactions for your matchups. There's multiple different builds of this deck, and it's just very flexible. It can be ran as an engine, a main deck. You can run it in like in any conceivable way.
Like I played this branded engine in Subterrors just because it's really good to slap on a Mirror Jade to stuff if you don't need to summon stuff from the extra deck. But yeah, and the deck is really just meant to outgrind your opponent. It's not really meant to just like one turn kill. It's not meant to like set up 5 negates and like just hope you can't play. It's really meant to just like be able to, oh, you broke my board, well, I'm just gonna bounce back from like 1 card. So it uses most of your hand turn 1 because it's a fusion deck. And then like turn 3 it uses your whole hand again because it just generated so much advantage for you through your opponent's turn that it just makes it so much easier to win games. Branded Opening, this card is so good. It plays under Shifter, which is great, and as does Branded Fusion. It's great that it plays under Shifter. You can activate it in the draw phase to play around Droll. It's just really an amazing card, and the fact that it's basically Salamangreat Great Bale Links in your graveyard like is just awesome because it gives you more reasons to play like Albion or Serenir. I don't have any of the Bestials right now. I'm working on that, but Serenir also has amazing synergy with this deck. So yeah. And then I only play 1 branded in red, and I play a branded Retribution. And the reason for this is because 1, I side this card out for whenever I'm going first. But in the event that I do go first, this is a really good card to have because it helps you dodge the Bestials a little bit. Like if you actually like choose to set branded in red and like all you have is a Mirror Jade, and like you're really banking on branded in red resolving, it really sucks for that to get hit with a Bestial or a Crow or a Bell or something like that. So playing the counter trap is really good because it gives you like basically like a Solemn Warning. And it's just really good. And having access to both of them is just insane. So in the matchup where I know I'm going against heavy Bestials, I usually go for Retribution first. But otherwise, like in a format where DD Crow wasn't like the best card, I would probably just play 2 branded in red. Yeah, makes it a really good draw too. And then I'm playing the Patchwork Engine as well, because you want to have copies of Polymerization in your hand or a way to get to them, and this engine generates a lot of advantage for you. So you could start with Edge Imp Chain, and if you get to Branded Fusion, then you can make Lubellion, discard Edge Imp Chain, grab Patchwork, grab another chain, grab a Poly. It's just like this card turns into 2 cards, this card turns into 2 cards. Like it's just insane. But only 2 Polymerization is fine because that does have the potential to like possibly brick your hand. But you do play a lot of monsters. So that's just a really good Poly engine, and it just recently got reprinted, which is good. So I need to go ahead and get my Ultra Edge Imp Chains. And the spice for the branded deck right now is 3 Predaplant Ophrys Scorpio. This card is a copy of Branded Fusion. This card is a copy of Instant Fusion. It's a copy of Poly. It's a copy of Super Poly. It's 2 bodies on the field. It's an easy way to throw an extra, like an actual negate onto your board, because you can plus off of it too, because if you open something like Despian Tragedy or Edge Imp Chain, then you can discard it for its effect and then grab a copy of Patchwork or grab a copy of Eluber or grab a copy of Adlib or something like that, and also special out Darlingtonia Cobra from the deck, because this on summon lets you search any fusion or polymerization spell. So typically we just grab instant fusion off of that, but in the event that we don't need to like normal summon, like if we open hard branded fusion or something, we have a way to access this engine so that we can actually just go ahead and use instant fusion and throw an extra negate on the board by fusing with Biblisp from the deck. Using this and Albaz to make Lubellion allows you to chain block your Lubellion, and it also searches Predaplant Ophrys Scorpio, so you have a way to normal summon and access different engines in your deck so that you can potentially make like a board that's just actually really hard to break. But on another hand, the instant fusion target for the Predaplant engine searches this card, Predaplant Bufollicula, which is pretty much only useful for its pendulum effect. You basically you normal this, discard a monster, special this, grab instant fusion, and then you instant fusion for the Predaplant fusion, and it searches a Predaplant monster. So you grab Bufollicula, scale it, and you have a copy of Polymerization. So it's a really good way to keep extending if like one of your cards gets negated. And this whole engine is completely accessible by branded fusion, and if you just open this monster in like branded opening, like you're insane. You're just basically better than your opponent. There's no way around that. So the Predaplant engine in this deck is just really good. And it's definitely not mandatory, but it's really insane, and it's really funny to watch your opponents realize that you can just search instant fusion. It's just hilarious.
One thought I have just by reading these cards, with Biblisp, you could run like multiple copies of it and play around as Shizu mills, because not only would you have Tragedy as a good mill, but then you'd also have Biblisp, and I do believe Bufollicula has an on-send effect as well. Oh, if it's used as fusion material for brand fusion, no, you can add a Dark Pendulum monster. It's fair.
Yeah, its monster effect doesn't really ever come up.
Definitely
but
not.
Its pendulum effect is just really good because, like, it's a different copy of Polymerization. So you essentially have like literally like 4 engines that grab a fusion spell for you all at once. So sometimes your hand is so gassed that it just doesn't matter what your opponent has or what they have already put up. But yeah, like I said, I'm on 3 Allure. And that card's just insane. Because like if you open multiples of the Predaplants, or if you open a Fallen of Albaz that you want to shuffle back with Lubellion, it's really good because you can make Lubellion shuffle back an Albaz, and then you have one in your grave, so that if you end up getting to Cartesia, then you have another copy of Polymerization. So like Allure is just really good. Banishing Tragedy or Mercurier off of it is just really freaking good. And it's a way to like keep playing if like your Brand Fusion gets negated. Like if you do happen to have an Albaz in your hand or draw into one off of Allure, you can banish it, or a Mercurier, you can banish it and search Albaz, and then like hard poly that way. And then Super Poly at 3. I've got pre-PSCT copy, and I wish I had 3, but that card's just insane. I main deck this card because it's useful against a lot of matchups. You can proc the tier effects with it, so you got to be careful, but hitting like Dark World players with this is really good, and hitting other Despia players with this is really like literally plussing off of your opponent's deck is insane because they're playing like a mirror match. Like Super Poly is just busted, and I mean it came in clutch with me against Sprite at locals this week, and not even just because it was Sprite. Like he was playing Tri Brigade too, and I ended up being able to make Guru off of his stuff. So yeah, Super Poly is just insane. I don't see a reason to, not even play this card. I would say maybe play it in the side, but I really like it in the main just because my locals is really like Ishizu and Sprite and tier heavy. So, and then we just play one called by because it's Saki.
Called by the GOAT.
Called by is the GOAT. Put it at 3.
3 or 0. We
zero.
shouldn't play around this. It should either be like absolutely unlimited and just wild, or it should just be like gone.
Yeah, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, we don't like playing around with one-ohs.
I'll show you the side real quick because it's unfinished, but there's some important things to note. So the first thing is going to be the raw lock. This is really good against certain things. It punishes the hell out of rogue decks. If you can literally just force your combo to do this. Like you can make Albion with Disciple and Albaz from your branded fusion, and then you can just search this off of Albion in the end phase, and then revive this to your opponent's field, and they literally cannot tribute summon using it, and they cannot special summon because you can only special summon Ra's Disciple. And it's just really kind of difficult to out unless they open like exactly Droplet or like Dark Hole or something like that. So yeah, it's really good. It basically won me a game at locals this week also. So it's kind of just important to note that you can definitely do something like that. You could also play like Banisher.
Any light or dark target that you want to special summon, you can do it. End of Anubis is a good one.
Yeah.
Banisher is a good one. Some people might like playing Jowgen because they're an old school Spellbook fan, I imagine.
Yeah.
Just any light or dark you can imagine. It's essentially this deck's way of doing Mannequin Cat, but you don't have to wait for your opponent to do anything.
No, you can just shotgun.
But you do have to play a trap.
Yeah, you do have to play a trap, and you do have to bounce a fusion that you control. So those are like two things that may not necessarily be good. And another thing is that if your opponent knows that you're going to do this to them, they may have hand traps to deal with it. So you might center your strategy around doing the raw lock to them, and they just drew DD Crow or a Bestial or something, which is another reason why this is in the side deck and why we're only playing one branded in red is because Bestials are just wild. And I'm citing the Regained because it's really good under Shifter, and it's also really good to shuffle back opponents' targets that get banished and draw off of it. So like if you draw into Mercurier off of this, it's just insane. But definitely I would main this if I had Bestials. 3 Ruler, because this is probably the best way to deal with a tier board right now. This plus Evenly is insane. Or Evenly plus Lightning Storm or something like that is just insane. This card is really good, and the deck doesn't necessarily OTK every time anyway, so it doesn't really matter if you can't do damage. And then the last thing is 3 D-Shifter. I definitely think that this card is mandatory in the side deck right now if you're going to be going to any sort of competitive event, because the deck can play just fine under it. It does hinder your advantage a little bit, but if you're playing against something that just like dies to Shifter, it is absolutely like just so much easier to beat them if you open it. It does turn it into a little bit of a grind because you have to be selective with how you fuse because your stuff's going to get banished. But it is a really good card, and it definitely has won me multiple games before. And I've also played games where I activate this card against somebody who normally their deck dies to this card, and I ended up losing anyways. That happened to me tonight against Brad, but it just be like that. Sometimes you take a gamble, and this card is certainly a gamble, but having this to punish tier is really good. Another thing I would consider playing is Different Dimension Ground, because being able to set that going first against tier is also really good because it's basically a turn skip for them. But anyway, yeah, we'll get on to the extra. So I play 1 Guardian Chimera. You could argue for 2 if you really wanted to, but I don't think that 2 is necessary, because typically if you actually get to resolve this off of branded in red, maybe pop 2 and draw a card. And again, drawing into like Mercurier is really good. Getting to resolve this may just mean that the game is over, depending on if it's very well placed or if your opponent has to bait it out, but I don't think you need 2 of it. The card is also incredibly beautiful. Dragostapalia, because that card is really good, and it's really good with Super Poly, especially in the current meta. Garura is also a really great Super Poly target, and as is Mud Dragon. And I'm playing all three because I'm playing Super Poly in the main deck. But yeah, those are the Super Poly targets. And then another interesting card is Predaplant Ambulomolites. This is the instant fusion target. Searches a Speller Trap or a Predaplant monster. So if I was playing like Practice, I could search it with this. And it's just you can also tribute it and I think special summon a Predaplant from the deck. So this is a really good card if you hard draw instant fusion. Then the Despias, 1 Quertus, and then 3 Masquerade. The reason that I'm playing 3 Masquerade is because some matchups, it's really just better to just skip the Mirror Jade and go straight into like double Masquerade. It's really hard to pull off triple Masquerade, but double Masquerade with like maybe branded and red set is like a really good board against some things. Like in my experience against Dark World, setting up 1 Masquerade, they definitely can out that before they get to a detrimental number of life points. Sometimes double Masquerade is just a lot better, and then using it like in the grind is also really good because when your opponent gets down to a certain number of life points, you activate this, it puts them on like 1 or 2 activations. So I think triple's not a bad idea right now.
Becomes a floodgate at a point, so it's just a really good thing.
Yeah, it's a really good card. It's necessary, but you could play 2. 2 Mirror Jade, I would honestly play 1, but it comes up having the second one because, you can't always, like, shuffle yours back with Lubellion or something like that, and your opponent certainly isn't going to shuffle it back for you with an Ishizu. But 2 Mirror Jade is just fine. And then 2 Lubellion and 2 Albion. This is my favorite card in the whole deck. I mean, it's just so good. It's so good. Comboing these cards together in summoning is really good. It puts you like 2 fusion monsters on the board if you can do it, and shuffles back banished mats. It's just really awesome. And this card plus branded regained is really good. Yeah, it's just insane. But that will be the whole deck. Some things that I've noted with that is, like I said, Shifter is not an auto win, so you have to be careful when you play it. But I do think that it's definitely something you should very much consider siding, because it does punish rogue decks really hard. In some matchups I've had at locals, like Sprite has been a pretty easy matchup because they don't really put up a lot of negates right now outside of like hand traps and Bestials. Bestials aren't like a negate, but you know what I mean. So like breaking Sprite boards is pretty easy when you open cards like Super Poly, because they'll end on like red plus elf, and you're just like, sweet, that's a Garura. So you get to make Garura off of that, and that just Super Poly just makes it so much easier to OTK. So yeah, the Sprite matchup is pretty easy as long as they're not like opening every single Bestial. But then, like I said, that's why we have built-in ways to play around that, like branded retribution. That way we still have it like in the gate. And the Predaplant engine sets up Durgos to Paleo for you, so you don't have to just have 3 or 4 empty extra deck slots that don't do anything unless you draw Super Poly. You can actually make Durgos to Paleo off of the Predaplant engine. So the Sprite matchup is pretty easy. The tier matchup is pretty good because, like, if they mill your stuff, then you're just golden. Milling Tragedy for you is just really awesome.
Also, hitting Biblis, perhaps maybe running more copies of that too, just in preparation, is a good idea.
2 Biblis would probably be something I would consider, especially with branded opening as well. Like, you have stuff in your deck and then other decks that also, like, you benefit off of getting milled sometimes. So playing cards like Biblisp and Tragedy at 3 is, or at more than 1 at least, is not a bad idea. Especially if you're playing like cards like Allure for Tragedy. So the Ishizu matchup is pretty easy. It's pretty good to get them like with the branded retribution. Like if they don't get a great mill and they only mill like 1 name or something, and hitting it with the branded retribution is just really good. And yeah, it's just really good. The Dark World matchup is also really interesting. Like I said, I think that one's definitely like a double Masquerade or a triple Masquerade end board is probably necessary. because you just cannot let them keep going. The longer they combo, the harder it is to beat them. And that's pretty much like how the matchups go. The deck is really good. It grinds for a while, but you got to be smart with your stuff because it's really easy to out-resource yourself.
All right.